This is why. And I feel that this is what happens a lot with men. We become angry because of how our emotions are treated and handled, but it's not that anger is just this default setting.
Well, and so when I said socialized toward anger, and by that I just mean when we're talking to young men, boys, teenagers, oftentimes anger is immediately understood and kind of respected, particularly by other kids, but also by parents. That's not to say that men immediately default to anger just in general, but when you teach a person, when you condition a person to know that their anger will be accepted and understood, and their sadness or anxiety or frustration will not, then oftentimes that's the emotion that men are most readily able to express. So that doesn't mean that, that's the only feeling. That doesn't mean that's the first feeling. It just means that's the feeling that people maybe expect. As you said, your feelings might be misinterpreted or translated as though they were anger, right? But also, we're gonna have people that might shut down every emotion but anger because they know what to expect when this emotion is expressed versus another one.
I think that is kind of unfair to solely put that on men as well. Aisha just pointed out that when Amira called her out on that the head snapping and all the other stuff, that's I would deem that as a form of anger. That's frustration. So most of the time, American women don't do that when they're happy. Oh, girl, I'm so happy. They don't do that when they're
Yes,
happy.
we
They
do.
do.
I
They
digress.
do that.
Yes, we do. I'm sorry. It's a
No,
part of
no,
it.
that we
I digress.
primarily see that when they're upset. So it's that innately is
Well, and I feel like maybe I said it wrong because I had
because
two
you
responses that
did
are
say
like,
that's men's default emotion.
yeah.
That was
So, yeah, I think I said it wrong because to me, that's not a man's problem. To me, that's a social problem. So if, socially and societally, this is the expectation, then a person becomes conditioned to express one emotion versus another. And to me, that's the point. So when the video was saying like we need to create spaces of safety for men, I agree. And I think that that's why. I think it's because, as women, we don't want to see as much anger, and we say that emphatically. But then at the same time, we respond in a dismissive, minimalizing way to other emotions. So the emphasis to me is create those spaces of emotional safety for both genders, but particularly men, because we want men to express their frustration before becoming explosive, right? Like a man who is able to express his sadness and frustration and disappointment is a man who is not probably going to punch a hole in the wall, right? He was able to express himself and say how he was feeling and be heard, right? And so then when you create that space, you end up having a situation in which both parties do a little bit better.
I think
I'm a,
healing plays a large. Oh, go ahead, Hank.
no, go ahead. You already started.
I was just gonna say I feel like healing plays a large part in just receiving information and giving information. I think that that's what helped me with a lot of the relationships with people I care about, people I can't just cut off who might have these issues, understanding that what they're doing is not an attack towards me, you know? And I do agree with what he said. I feel like, and what you're saying, I see that happen with little boys a lot. Why are you crying? Stop crying like a girl. It was just something on Facebook where a little boy was playing football and he started crying. And the coach told him, stop crying before I put you with the girls, versus asking him, why are you crying? And helping him regulate his emotions. So therefore, not even just that, my daughter just had an issue with a boy in school. And he came up to me. He said, "Your daughter hurt my feelings." And I said, "Well, what happened?" He said that in second grade she broke my heart, and she's currently, and the way Demaya, she expresses this to everybody, this is her best friend. This is somebody she's getting to know. And I just tried to empathize with him, and you could tell he wanted to cry. But this little boy, the way that crying emotion turned into anger real quick, I was scared because I'm like, you could kind of see how he's being raised in his life. You can tell that nobody's empathizing with his tears, and they're just telling him to stop crying. It's not worth you crying. When you're a man, you can't cry about this. Now, I do feel like a lot of people coach their kids like that so they don't get bullied in school. Once again, that goes back to society as well. So I do agree with you that when men are under a state of emotion, they tend to display anger, and it's not fair. I don't think it's fair. And I do think that if they learned how to do what Cloud says he does, learn how to express themselves as what the emotion is, then things can definitely get done better. But I do feel like society definitely plays a role in that, because my sister also has a little boy on the football team, and she allows him to express himself. And he doesn't really cry that often because he's allowed to express himself at home, but he tells her, "Hey, I felt disrespected. This is what he said to me." So then she'll have to go back to the coach. And it's crazy because he wasn't the only little boy on the team that felt like that. The other little boys responded to one coach better than the other coach because the other coach helped him regulate those emotions. It seems like people expect little boys to do that just because they will be men, and not understanding that, hey, these are children. And in order for him to gain an understanding of these wide range emotions, talk to him and say, "Hey, I understand you frustrated. Let's talk about this." Like, I seen one coach, what he did was he asked the little boy, "Well, why you crying?" He said, "Because I don't think I could do this." He said, "Well, do you still have energy?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Can you still breathe?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, you're frustrated, but I need you to push through this frustration." So he didn't tell him to stop crying, but the little boy did the drill while crying. And then when he got finished, he wiped those tears and he understood, like, okay, I can be frustrated. You know what I'm saying? He didn't tell him to stop crying. And sure enough, the more he continued to do those drills, the tears would soon dissipate. And I don't think a lot of men get that leeway in society.
I will second that.
Well,
I have 3 children, and the youngest of which is my boy. I've got 2 older girls and a younger boy. And of the 3 of them, he's the baby. He should be allowed to cry, and people get the most irritated with him.